A Lantern, Chapter 7. They were married on a winter's day of 1865, when Abby was not quite 19 and Will was 23. The day was mild, even warm, a phenomenon for that time of year. A weather breeder, everyone called it. A few men shed their coats and worked in their shirt sleeves during the middle of the day so that they might tell of it in years to come. Maggie Mackenzie and Abby and Mary set the furniture out of the log house so there would be room for the guests. Janet's 2 children were designated as a committee to keep the chickens off the various pieces. But so excited were the youngsters over the elaborate culinary preparations that during a period of the abandonment of their posts, an old hen flew up on top of the highboy and laid an egg in the workbasket. Abby made 2 new dresses from cloth sent out from Chicago. One was a wine-colored merino, the other a brown alpaca, both made fashionably full over hoop skirts with panniers at the side. A new little hat, the shape of a butter bowl with ribbon bows on it, added much to her pride. Toward evening of the great day, Abby was all of a flutter because there were so many things to do. There was still water to be heated in the boiler on the stove and the wash tub to be brought in for her bath. She had to skim a pan of milk so that she could make the skin of her face and hands soft with cream. And she nearly forgot the flour she was to brown in the oven with which to powder her body. Basil, 15 now, helped take the hot water on its perilous journey up the loft ladder with saplings nailed across for steps, and lifted up the wooden tub on his strong young shoulders. In spite of the unusually warm day, it was a little chilly for one's ablutions in the loft room, but Abby was young and vigorous and used to it. She put on her muslin chemise and pantalettes and her tight little stays, holding her breath until she could lace them so tight that her 2 hands could almost span her waist. Into her bosom she slipped a little netting sack of dried rose petals, which smelled faintly and tantalizingly of bygone Junes. Then over her head she dropped and fastened the long collapsible hoop skirt, with its 19 bands of white-covered wires. There were 3 white muslin petticoats, starched almost to china-ware stiffness and ruffled to the knees. Abby and her mother had hemmed 72 yards of ruffles by hand. Grandma Deal had one of the house stitching machines, but not all families could afford one. Then at last she put on her wine-colored merino with its countless rows of flutings of the same material and side panniers. She was patting her hair into place and pulling out the long shoulder curl when her mother came puffingly slowly up the loft ladder. Mother was getting old now. She was 47, heavy and placid. Her fat round face in its white cap with strings tied under her 2 chins appeared in the loft opening. Abby went over to her and took her hand so that she would not fall. She saw that her mother had the calfskin-covered box in her hand. It was several moments before Maggie Mackenzie could talk puffingly after the climb. "Abby, I want you to have the pearls. I'm saving the fan for Mary. Janet has the breastpin, you know, and Belle the shawl. Belle always stuck and hung for the shawl. And the pearls are for you. You'll ne'er starve as long as you have 'em." She opened the little hairy skin chest and took out a small velvet box, and from it the pearls themselves. She twined them through her short, stubby fingers, their creamy shimmer incongruous with the plump peasant hand. "They were Basil's fine mother's after she died. Basil gave them to me in the days of wealth. Sure, but it wasn't the wealth that brought us happiness. Many's the time I've hated it, longing for a little house somewhere, out of the wind and rain. And not many things at all." There were tears in Abby's brown eyes when she took them. She held their creamy luster in the palm of her firm young hand. Into her mind came that old admiration for Isabel Anders Mackenzie. The touch of the jewels seemed to bring her near, to call up the vision of the lovely lady who was wearing them in the wide gold frame. The lovely lady with the sweeping velvet and the long flowing plume and the fingers that tapered at the ends. Some day she was going to be like her. Some day she, too, would be lovely and gracious and wealthy. All of life was before her. All the future was hers. And that future now held Will, with his steady gray eyes. Will Deal, who was like a quiet harbor. Song, soft and meltingly tender, came to her lips. "O the Lady of the Lee, fair and young and gay was she." She held the pearls up to the wine-colored merino and looked in the small oblong glass. Beautiful exceedingly, the Lady of the Lee. Then she turned to her mother. Her face was flushed, tender. "Thank you, Mother, so much. I'll keep them always. But with the dark dress and the high neck, I'll just not wear them tonight. After a while, when Will and I are wealthy, I'll wear them. And maybe we'll have—" Some reticences existing at the time, the blood swept Abby's face. "Maybe we'll have a daughter someday, and she can wear them on her wedding night, in white satin, and all the things that go with it." Abby swept across the dingy loft room, her hoops swinging in wiry bounces. She knelt down by her mother's chair, her skirts forming a huge circular mound, and lay her head against the older woman's. "And besides, Mother, you understand, don't you? When you follow your heart, you don't need pearls to make you happy." It was time now. Abby went down the ladder with saplings nailed across for steps. She had to go backwards so their hoops could navigate the descension with some degree of modesty. The fiddlers were playing The Girl I Left Behind Me. Will, looking big and fine and handsome, was there in the black suit Grandma Deal had made him. Grandpa Deal, with his one arm and the kindly twinkle in his ice-blue eyes, was there, joking. Grandma Deal, in a black cap with black strings tied under the face that was covered with the faint tracings of a host of wrinkles, was there. She was nervous, fretful, and scolding. Why didn't the men stand back? Why didn't they shut that door? Where was that preacher keeping himself? 1,000 mental worries like 1,000 gnats irritating the peace of her mind. Whole families had come in wagons. Regina Deal and her beau, and Dr. and Mrs. Matthews were the only ones who had come in high-top buggies. When the doctor and his wife came in, there was a little buzz of excitement, some whispering that they wondered whether or not it was true that young Ed had wanted Abby. A solemn hush fell on the company. "Inasmuch as we are gathered here together in the sight of the Lord." Suddenly, Abby wanted to halt the ceremony. There seemed nothing in her mind but that odd thought of wind rushing by, a wind she could not stop, time going by, time which she could not stay. Stop time for a minute, until she could think what queer thing was happening to her. "Do you take this woman, sickness, health, till death?" What a queer thing to talk about now, death, when it was life that was before them. "This man, lawfully wedded husband?" "I do. But oh, Will, who are you? Do I know you?" And then quite suddenly, Abby Mackenzie was Abby Deal. The fiddles played Money Musk and Turkey in the Straw. The company danced, square dances of intricate design. Grandpa Deal wanted to take a partner, but Grandma Deal said no, it was foolish for an old man 55. But Maggie O'Connor Mackenzie danced, alone, lightly and puffingly in the middle of the floor, to "Oh, the days of the Kerry dancing, oh, the days when my heart was young." There were biscuits and chickens and cakes and cider to be eaten from the tables formed by putting long boards over sawhorses, and then more dancing. Will Deal's dark, serious face bent low above Abby's creamy-petaled flushed one. A long row of love apples stood in the window.